It started with a seemingly harmless comment from a retired royal jeweler one made during a private conversation that was never expected to leave the room. Yet within days, palace insiders were quietly discussing a ruby jewelry set long surrounded by mystery. According to growing whispers, Meghan had once expressed interest in the treasured collection. But decades earlier, the Queen Mother had already made a decision that would shape the set's fate forever. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. At first, almost nobody paid attention to the remark. The retired jeweler had spent years around royal collections, handling pieces that carried histories stretching back generations. Comments about forgotten tiaras, sapphire brooches, and emerald necklaces were nothing unusual. But this time was different. The moment the ruby set was mentioned, something unexpected happened. People inside royal circles began asking questions that had not been asked for years. What exactly was this collection? Why had it remained largely absent from public discussion? And perhaps most importantly, why did its name still seem capable of creating discomfort among those familiar with its history? As curiosity spread, palace insiders reportedly started revisiting archival records connected to the collection. Royal historians, jewelry experts, and longtime commentators found themselves drawn into a story that appeared far more complicated than a simple matter of gemstones. The deeper they looked, the more they discovered references to a collection that had always occupied a unique place within the royal family. According to various accounts, the ruby set was never viewed as just another valuable possession. Its significance reportedly extended beyond diamonds, rubies, and precious metals. For some, it represented continuity. For others, it symbolized duty. And for a select group of senior royals throughout the decades, it allegedly carried an emotional importance that could not be measured by its monetary value. That was precisely what made the growing rumors so intriguing. Reports soon emerged suggesting that Meghan had admired the collection during her time as a working member of the royal family. Whether those reports were entirely accurate remains the subject of ongoing debate, yet their persistence was impossible to ignore. Royal commentators began discussing the possibility that interest in the ruby set had quietly reached influential figures within the institution, reopening conversations that many believed had long been settled. What transformed the story from intriguing to explosive, however, was the appearance of another name: the Queen Mother. As journalists and royal observers dug deeper, they repeatedly encountered references to a decision allegedly made decades earlier. Details varied depending on the source. Some described it as a personal preference. Others suggested it was a firmly expressed wish communicated within trusted royal circles. Whatever the truth may have been, one element remained remarkably consistent across multiple versions of the story. The Queen Mother reportedly had very strong feelings regarding the future of the ruby collection. That revelation changed everything. Suddenly, the discussion was no longer about who admired the jewels or who may have hoped to wear them. The focus shifted toward a far larger question involving legacy, stewardship, and the preservation of royal traditions. Why would a decision made generations earlier still carry such influence today? And what was it about this particular collection that made senior royals continue treating it differently from countless other family heirlooms? As investigators, commentators, and palace insiders continued piecing together fragments of the story, one conclusion became increasingly difficult to dismiss. The real mystery was never the gemstones themselves. But the mystery wasn't simply about a piece of jewelry, it was about why the Queen Mother reportedly wanted that ruby set kept away from certain hands. As curiosity intensified, attention shifted to the extraordinary history behind the ruby collection itself. Unlike many famous royal jewels, this set rarely appeared in public and seldom attracted headlines. Yet those familiar with royal traditions claimed its significance extended far beyond gemstones. For generations, it reportedly symbolized loyalty, continuity, and a deeply personal connection to the women entrusted with preserving the crown's legacy. The more people learned about the collection, the more mysterious it seemed to become. Royal jewels often attract public fascination because of their beauty, rarity, or value. This ruby set, however, appeared to occupy a different category altogether. According to royal historians and long-time observers, its importance was rooted not in its appearance, but in the story attached to it. It was a story that stretched across decades, connecting generations of royal women through an unwritten tradition built on duty, responsibility, and trust. Reports suggest the collection first gained significance during a period when the monarchy faced immense challenges and transformation. As new generations entered public life and older generations gradually stepped aside, certain heirlooms became symbols of continuity. The ruby set was allegedly one of those treasures. While it may not have enjoyed the fame of some of the crown's most recognizable pieces, insiders often described it as a collection with profound emotional importance inside royal circles. That emotional significance only grew over time. Various accounts linked the collection to several senior royal women whose dedication to the institution earned widespread respect. Although public appearances featuring the set were reportedly rare, each appearance seemed carefully chosen. Royal commentators noted that the collection was never treated as an accessory for publicity. Instead, it appeared during moments that carried deeper meaning, reinforcing the belief that its value extended far beyond gemstones and precious metals. This unusual pattern soon attracted the attention of researchers investigating the growing mystery. As jewelry experts revisited historical records and archived photographs, they discovered how infrequently the collection had been displayed. Decades could pass between appearances. Entire generations of royal watchers remained unaware of its existence. That rarity only strengthened speculation that the collection occupied a uniquely protected position within the family. But why? According to several theories circulating among royal historians, the answer involved symbolism. The ruby set allegedly represented qualities the monarchy sought to preserve through changing times: loyalty during difficult periods, stability amid uncertainty, service above personal ambition. Whether these interpretations were entirely accurate remained impossible to verify, yet they appeared repeatedly whenever discussions turned toward the collection's history. The deeper researchers ventured into the story, the clearer one reality became. The ruby set was not protected because it was expensive. It was protected because it was meaningful. That distinction changed everything. Suddenly, conversations about inheritance and ownership seemed less important than questions about stewardship. Who would carry the legacy associated with the collection? Who would be trusted with the responsibility attached to its history? And why did so many reports suggest previous generations had been extraordinarily careful when considering those questions? As public fascination grew, historians, commentators, and palace observers continued searching for answers. The collection's rarity, its association with respected royal women, and the persistent references to unwritten family traditions all pointed toward a larger story waiting to be uncovered. Then came the discovery that shifted the entire investigation in a new direction. Hidden among years of speculation and fragmented accounts were reports of a request that some insiders believed altered the conversation forever. And as researchers dug deeper into its history, they uncovered reports of a request that allegedly changed everything. According to long-circulating palace rumors, interest in the ruby set resurfaced years later during a period of major change within the monarchy. While details remain disputed, several royal commentators claim discussions surrounding the collection quietly reached senior members of the family. What followed reportedly triggered concerns that extended far beyond jewelry and touched sensitive questions of legacy and responsibility. By the time these rumors began circulating, the monarchy was already navigating one of the most significant transitional periods in modern royal history. New figures were stepping into more prominent roles, long-established traditions were being examined through a contemporary lens, and every decision seemed to carry greater weight than before. Against that backdrop, the story of the ruby collection unexpectedly returned to the conversation. At first, the reports appeared relatively straightforward. According to various royal commentators, Meghan had allegedly expressed admiration for the collection at some point during her time within royal circles. There was nothing unusual about appreciating a historic family heirloom. Members of the royal family have long admired important pieces of jewelry, and discussions surrounding collections often occur naturally within families that possess generations of treasured artifacts. Yet insiders claim the reaction to this particular interest was different. As whispers spread through palace corridors, reports suggest that information regarding the collection eventually reached senior royal figures. What happened next remains heavily disputed. Some sources described the discussions as routine. Others suggested they prompted immediate concern among individuals responsible for safeguarding royal traditions. Regardless of which version proves closest to reality, one fact remained consistent across nearly every account. The conversation quickly evolved beyond admiration and entered territory involving legacy, responsibility, and stewardship. That shift changed the entire meaning of the story. The ruby collection was reportedly viewed by many within royal circles as something more than personal property. Over time, it had become linked to broader questions about continuity and preservation. Certain heirlooms carried expectations attached to them, not because of their financial value, but because of what they represented. To some observers, receiving such pieces was never simply about possession. It was about becoming part of a tradition that stretched across generations. As those ideas entered the discussion, concerns reportedly began emerging among palace advisors. Several royal commentators have suggested that advisors responsible for historical collections grew increasingly cautious whenever conversations involved particularly significant heirlooms. Their role was not merely administrative, it involved protecting items considered important to the monarchy's story. Because of that responsibility, even informal discussions could attract attention when they touched on collections carrying symbolic importance. According to reports, unease gradually developed behind the scenes. No public disagreements surfaced, no official statements addressed the matter. Yet insiders continued describing an atmosphere in which different perspectives quietly emerged. Some reportedly viewed the issue as harmless interest in a family treasure. Others believed the conversation raised broader questions regarding who should ultimately inherit pieces associated with specific royal traditions. Those differing viewpoints may have remained private, but they reflected a growing tension surrounding the collection's future. The deeper observers looked, the more they realized the story was never really about one person's admiration for a famous set of rubies. Instead, it appeared connected to larger questions that have shaped royal history for generations. Who becomes the custodian of important family treasures? How are those decisions made? And what happens when modern expectations collide with traditions established decades earlier? Those questions lingered long after the initial reports faded from public attention. In fact, they only became more important as historians continued uncovering references to older decisions and forgotten understandings connected to the collection itself. Because as intriguing as the request may have been, many insiders believed it was never the true source of the controversy. Yet the deeper issue was not who admired the jewels, but the rule that had reportedly existed long before the request was ever made. Buried within decades of royal history was a decision that few outside palace circles had ever heard about. According to persistent reports, the Queen Mother had established clear preferences regarding the future of certain family treasures. Whether formal or informal, those wishes allegedly carried enormous weight. And among the items frequently mentioned in those discussions was the very ruby set now attracting renewed attention. As researchers continued following the trail left behind by years of rumors and speculation, they found themselves returning to the same figure again and again. The Queen Mother. Even decades after her passing, her influence remained deeply woven into the traditions and customs that shaped the royal family. Those who studied royal history often described her as someone who understood that family heirlooms were never simply possessions, they were symbols. They carried stories, expectations, and responsibilities that extended far beyond the people who temporarily wore them. That belief appeared to play a crucial role in the ongoing mystery surrounding the ruby collection. According to various accounts, the Queen Mother reportedly held strong views regarding certain treasures passed through the royal family. Some historians believe these preferences were communicated privately over many years. Others suggest they became part of an unwritten understanding respected by those entrusted with preserving royal traditions. Whatever form they may have taken, the reports all pointed toward the same conclusion. Her wishes were treated with extraordinary seriousness. That was hardly surprising. Throughout royal history, jewelry allocation has rarely been determined solely by personal preference. Family heirlooms often carry symbolic meanings that influence how they are passed from one generation to the next. Certain pieces become associated with service, others become linked to duty. Some represent continuity during periods of uncertainty. In these cases, inheritance is often viewed not as a reward but as a responsibility. The ruby set reportedly belonged to that category. Royal commentators repeatedly noted that discussions surrounding the collection almost always returned to questions of stewardship rather than ownership. Who would safeguard its legacy? Who would honor the traditions attached to it? And who would ensure that future generations understood its significance? These questions seem to matter just as much as the gemstones themselves. As a result, reports regarding the Queen Mother's preferences continued attracting attention. According to palace insiders and royal historians, senior members of the family have long demonstrated respect for decisions and understandings established by previous generations. While circumstances change over time, traditions often survive because successive generations choose to preserve them. That respect for continuity has helped shape countless aspects of royal life, from ceremonial practices to family heirlooms. The ruby collection increasingly appeared to be one of those cases. The more commentators examined the story, the more frequently the collection's name surfaced whenever conversations turned toward the Queen Mother's legacy. Some viewed the connection as evidence of her lasting influence. Others believed it explained why the collection remained so carefully protected throughout the years. Regardless of interpretation, the association seemed impossible to ignore. Yet not everyone agreed on how such preferences should be honored. That disagreement introduced an entirely new layer of complexity to the story. If wishes expressed decades earlier still influenced decisions today, how should they be interpreted? Should they remain binding across generations, or should changing circumstances allow for different outcomes? These questions fueled ongoing debates among historians, royal observers, and commentators alike. What began as curiosity about a forgotten ruby set had now evolved into something much larger. The story was no longer simply about jewelry. It was about tradition, legacy, and the invisible rules that continue shaping royal decisions long after the people who created them are gone. But if those wishes were truly known inside the palace, the next question became impossible to avoid. As the story gained momentum, attention shifted toward an even more intriguing mystery. If the Queen Mother had reportedly ruled out certain possibilities, then who was ultimately intended to inherit the treasured collection? The answer, according to some royal observers, may reveal far more about the monarchy's future priorities than any public statement ever could. The question transformed the entire debate. Until that point, much of the public discussion had focused on who may have admired the ruby set and why interest in the collection generated such intense speculation. But now attention turned towards something far more consequential. If previous generations had carefully protected the collection and attached special significance to its future, then someone, somewhere, must have been viewed as its eventual steward. Royal commentators quickly began offering theories. Some believed the collection was always intended for a future generation rather than a current one. Others suggested that its inheritance would depend not on rank alone, but on the qualities associated with preserving royal traditions. Regardless of the differing opinions, most observers agreed on one point. The ruby set appeared connected to a larger vision for the monarchy's future, rather than the preferences of any single individual. As those discussions intensified, Catherine's name surfaced with increasing frequency. Over recent years, the Princess of Wales had come to symbolize continuity, stability, and public confidence for many royal supporters. Her growing prominence within the family naturally led commentators to question whether historic heirlooms carrying deep symbolic meaning might one day become associated with her role. No evidence conclusively supported those theories, yet they continued gaining traction because they aligned with a broader narrative surrounding the monarchy's future direction. What appeared to be a dispute over jewelry gradually exposed a deeper conflict inside the monarchy itself. On one side stood personal preference and modern expectations. On the other stood tradition, precedent, and generations of carefully protected royal customs. The ruby set had become more than a collection of gemstones, it had become a symbol of competing visions for the institution's future. That conflict resonated far beyond palace walls. Supporters of tradition argued that family treasures carried obligations that extended across generations. To them, heirlooms represented continuity and historical memory. Others questioned whether older customs should continue determining the future of collections in a changing world. The debate became less about gemstones and more about identity. What kind of monarchy was emerging? And how much influence should historic traditions continue to hold over modern decisions? Public fascination only grew stronger. Every new report sparked fresh discussion among royal commentators and historians. Articles examined the significance of inheritance traditions. Experts debated the meaning attached to specific heirlooms. Meanwhile, palace insiders reportedly worked carefully to prevent speculation from creating unnecessary tensions within the family. Yet the more people attempted to quiet the story, the more attention it seemed to attract. At its core, the controversy revealed something larger than any single collection ever could. It highlighted the ongoing balancing act between preserving history and adapting to the future. For generations, the monarchy has survived by navigating that delicate balance. The ruby set had simply become the latest symbol of that challenge. Yet the most revealing development emerged when former palace figures began quietly supporting one interpretation over another. While official confirmation remains elusive, insiders and commentators have spent years piecing together fragments of the story. Their conclusions vary, but many arrive at the same destination. They believe the ruby set was never simply about admiration or access. Instead, it represented an unwritten understanding about duty, service, and the responsibilities that accompany royal privilege. As the mystery continued to evolve, former palace figures, royal commentators, and historians increasingly found themselves reaching similar conclusions. Their interpretations differed in detail, but the central theme remained remarkably consistent. The ruby collection was never viewed as merely a beautiful heirloom. It had become a symbol of something much larger, an enduring belief that royal privileges carry obligations, and that treasured family artifacts often represent service as much as status. According to many observers, that distinction explains why the collection continues attracting attention years after the original rumors emerged. The monarchy has always relied on continuity. Generations come and go, but certain traditions remain because they embody values the institution wishes to preserve. In that context, the ruby set became a powerful symbol of responsibility, sacrifice, and stewardship. Its story endured not because of the gemstones themselves, but because of the principles people believed they represented. That perspective only strengthened as more voices entered the discussion. Former insiders reportedly described a royal culture with a long memory. Decisions made decades earlier can continue shaping expectations long into the future. Understandings established by previous generations often survive through custom rather than formal instruction. Whether those accounts are entirely accurate remains impossible to verify, yet they continue fueling public fascination because they offer a glimpse into how tradition may influence modern royal life. Today, the conversation is no longer about a single ruby collection. It is about what that collection represents. Whether every rumor proves accurate or not, many royal observers believe the story highlights a larger truth about how the monarchy protects its traditions. And if that interpretation is correct, the Queen Mother's influence may still be shaping decisions long after her passing. That possibility has helped keep the debate alive. Royal commentators continue discussing the significance of heirlooms, inheritance, and the responsibilities attached to historic collections. Public interest remains strong because the story touches upon universal questions about legacy, duty, and the choices that define institutions across generations. At the center of those conversations stands the enduring image of a collection that somehow became larger than itself. Many now view the ruby set as a reflection of the monarchy's ongoing balancing act between history and the future. The collection's significance appears tied not only to those who once possessed it, but also to those who may one day inherit the traditions associated with it. As discussions increasingly focus on future generations, Catherine's growing role within the monarchy often becomes part of the conversation, further reinforcing the idea that the story is ultimately about continuity rather than ownership. Whether the rumors surrounding the collection are fully accurate may never be known. Yet the fascination remains because the story speaks to something timeless. It reminds people that institutions are shaped not only by official decisions, but also by values passed quietly from one generation to the next. Because in the House of Windsor, the most valuable treasures are rarely measured by gemstones alone, they are measured by the legacy attached to them. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.